Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a really fun video. This is actually going to be 2 videos, so don't cut out too quick. Today we're going to answer the question, which cartridge is better, the 270 Winchester Short Magnum or the 7mm PRC? I've had a little bit of time to reload for the two, and I'm going to compare some loads today that I think are the best potential loads that I've made for each. And it's not an apples to apples comparison, it's just some really good hand loads that I believe have the potential to be really good. So we're gonna shoot those today. Take a look at this to get some more information on that. My 270 WSM is a 1 in 10 twist Winchester XPR. The 7PRC is a 1 in 8 twist. It's a CVA Cascade long range. Now, based on Google, the case capacity of a 270 WSM in water is 79.5 grains, and in the 7PRC, it's 82 grains. Max pressure of both is 65,000 psi, and both are typically in a 24-inch barrel. So these cases do hold a similar amount of powder. The 270 short mag is slightly wider, and obviously the 7PRC is longer. The 7PRC does have an edge on case capacity, and it might be just a little bit more than what Google says. I just put 71 grains of N570 in a 7PRC case and 69.5 grains in a 270 WSM case. In the 270 WSM, it was at the very top of the neck, heavily compressed, and with the 7PRC with 71 grains, it was barely to the bottom of the neck. So there definitely is a slight advantage in case capacity to the 7PRC. Now this is determined a lot by the way your chamber is cut, but with my 270 short mag, I really can't seat bullets out extremely far. Kind of try to give you an example here on camera, it's hard to do. But you can kind of see how far down this 136 grain terminal ascent goes well past the shoulder joint. There's the 165 grain Accubon long range. It's even further. That boat tail really extends in there a little ways. Here's the 160 grain CX in the 7PRC. You can tell it barely gets to the shoulder. And the same goes with the 195 grain Berger EOL, the Elite Hunter. Now the 7PRC is designed that way, so it's not really a surprise, but it is nice that it doesn't eat up the case capacity. Now you can see there what powder and what grain weight it is, and what I perceive I'm going to get on velocity, and how big of a jump it is. It is interesting that I have 69.5 grains in both, though they're completely different powders, and the N570 is very full. That is very interesting. But this basically are loads that I did not have pressure, that I got really good velocity. I have shot some groups, but I want to shoot a little bit more today, and just kind of see how they do. All right, same thing for the 7PRC. You can see how much of H1000 and N570 I'm using. Kind of shocking, it's once again 69.5. That's purely coincidence. 50 thousandths jump on the CX bullet, and then 71 grains of N570. And there you see the velocity I'm expecting to get, and you see how big of a jump. So that should tell you kind of what I perceive is going to happen today. Alright, so I shot those 7 shots in the 136 terminal ascent and the 270. And if you're wondering today why I'm shooting like 7-shot groups, or in one case an 8-shot group, That's how many rounds I had left that I wanted to shoot so that I'm on the same firing. So after today, all my brass for 270 WSM and 7 PRC will be shot twice, and I'll start the next firing, so that's the reason why. So the velocity was right what I expected, a little over 3,300, and the standard deviation was 10.2, so I am happy with that. It is 75 degrees today and it's straight sunny, and so on the bolt lift there was a bit of pressure, nothing major at all, really no signs of pressure on the case, but a slight bolt lift issue. But this is worst case today, you know, really hot, really sunny. And the other times I've shot them, there was no issues. So let's see if the group is okay. All right, so bummer. I can tell you those are the first three. And I was letting the barrel cool, and I was also using the barrel cooler. But as it got hotter, you could tell there was some shifting going on. So this is not a very good group at all. That's probably 2 inches, maybe closer to 3. So I will put it on the screen what it is. But for a 7-shot group, I'm not happy with that. So I would say not great on the accuracy, but once again, the first few shots were all right here. So in a normal hunting situation, you know, you're probably not going to have an issue with 1 or 2 or 3 shots. All right, I'm going to go up there and get the 7 PRC ready with its first loading, which is 160 grain CX bullet. And I'm fully aware that the accuracy today is, you know, based on how good I shoot and also the guns. You know, certain guns like certain bullets or certain ammo. So it doesn't necessarily mean, based on accuracy, which one's going to win. Not sure if that was on camera, but a bird flew right behind my ear. But it is worth noting. But the standard deviation was pretty good on that, and the velocity was where I expected. So let's get the 7 PRC out. All right, similar story. Got really good velocity, a little bit higher than I expected. That's probably because of the heat. The SD wasn't horrible. 13's a little more than I want, but it's not terrible. Had the same thing, a little bit of bolt lift pressure, not terrible, but it was definitely there. And so once again, you know, if it's somewhere between 30 and 60 degrees, you're probably not gonna feel that, but at 75 and sunny, I think you will. I'm trying to keep my ammo in the shade, but I feel like the heat's kind of having a toll on it too. Let's go down here and see what this 7-shot group looks like. Well, bummer. I can tell you that was the first shot, and then here was the last 6. So kind of got a little bit of a vertical string going there, which is not great. That's probably 2 inches. So 6 shots in 2 inches isn't terrible, but it's not great. That one though ruins it. So I'm not sure why the cold bore shot would be so much different than the rest of them. This might not be my day for tight groups, but we're still getting good, valuable info, and the SDs have been pretty good. All right, let's go to the 165 AccuBond long range. In case you're new to my channel, the stability of this bullet is subject probably to your elevation. It works fine here out of a 1 in 10 twist. right. The velocity was right there where I thought it would be. The first two were pretty low, and then the rest of them jumped up there. But the average was still pretty close, about 10 feet per second more than I expected. So pretty good there. The SD was up to 14.9, which is a little high. Wish I could get that down just a little bit. I'm sure you could tell that recoil jumps a little bit. It's funny shooting the 7 PRC with that muzzle brake and a heavier gun. It's a definite help on recoil. That Winchester without the brake definitely has some more kick, but it isn't too bad. But it definitely jumps. Definitely is a jumpy gun. Well, let's come down here and see what this 8-shot group looks like. Well, what do you know? It's not terrible. Definitely better than the first two. So that's 1.5 inches. Might be slightly over 1.5 inches, but it's pretty close to 1.5 inches. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then there's an 8th one in there somewhere. So there's like 3 in the same hole there or there. I'm not sure which, but there's 8 shots and 1.5 inch group. So that's actually pretty darn good. I don't feel like I'm shooting good today at all. Got a lot of glare and some other excuses that I'm going to try to give you. But compared to the other ones, you know, it's much better. On the 160 grain CXs, they weren't terrible. They were kind of a vertical string, but then they had that one that just made it horrible, which was the cold bore shot. And on the terminal ascend, it was just, well, it wasn't very good. About 2 3/4, 3 inch group, so wasn't very good. So of the 3, that's definitely the best. Worst SD, best group. But yeah, pretty cool. Let's go to the 195 Burger Elite Hunters in 7 PRC. Yeah, I'm going to shoot the last 4, but I just wanted to run down here and look. That's about 6/10 of an inch there, 2 together. Close to 1/2 inch, but I don't think it's quite 1/2 inch. Probably like 6/10 of an inch. The SD on those first 3 are like the same. There's almost no deviation. So those first 3 are really good, and I'm sure it's going to get worse. So I just kind of wanted to point it out. But anyway, let's shoot the last 4. Indeed, that is an inch group. Yeah, it might be like 1.1 inches or something, but it's really close to MOA. That's a 7-shot, basically MOA group with an SD of 6.9. As far as the groups go, that's the winner for today, easily. Now, stick around, because here in just a second, I'm going to have part 2 of this, and we're going to go back to the house, and we're going to really look at the numbers, and I'm just going to talk about the 2 cartridges, and I will pick a winner. But just based on this, I wanted to say the terminal ascents are just never that great in my 270 short mag. I've shot them a few different times. They're never super accurate. They're not bad. If you're limiting your shots to 200 or 300 yards, it's going to be a-okay. It's going to be just fine. But I've never got very good velocity out of it. Now, it could be just my particular rifle just doesn't like that bullet. The Accubon long ranges was a much better group. Oh, and I didn't have pressure on the last 2 groups at all. Both groups using N570 didn't have pressure. So pretty happy with the Accubon long ranges in the 270. The 160 CXs was okay. That one flyer just killed it. So definitely need to do some low development there. I don't really know. You know, there isn't enough there to really say. The vertical stringing, not ideal, I don't think. So probably need to do something different there. The 195 Burger, by far the best. As far as velocity, I was very happy. I got exactly what I thought I was going to get in every cartridge. The SDs across the board were all pretty good. The best was that last one by far. But the SD and the velocity was fantastic. Groups, the first two were pretty terrible, and the last two were decent, and that last one I think is fantastic. So on my next episode of Coffee and Cartridges, we're gonna really dig into this and figure out who's the winner, and that episode starts right now. And we're going to talk about these two cartridges, the 270 WSM, the 7mm PRC. Which one's the best? We're going to do a Coffee and Cartridges episode now about it, and stay tuned for that. All right, so just to clarify a few things. I understand that the testing I did in the previous segment, it's not apples to apples, and different people's going to get different, results, especially with different rifles. And so every rifle shoots different, every rifle likes different bullets, different powders differently. So that was me just taking a couple of my best loads, putting it out there so you could see particularly what you might expect when it comes to hand loads. One quick note on that 160 grain CX in the H1000. The group was terrible, but I got really good groups, like exceptionally good groups with H1000 with the 160 grain Norma tip strike. So I feel like if I back up a grain or half grain, I probably can get better groups. I just need to do some work. But those groups I just shot are just kind of letting you see what you can potentially get from the 270 WSM and the 7 PRC. When it comes to factory ammo, right now there's not a ton of either. It seems like there's more and more 7 PRC coming out all the time, and 270 WSM seems a little stagnant. It is much more available than it was a couple years ago. I did videos where I couldn't find any ammo, period, and then slowly it's come back on. So there's actually a decent amount of factory ammo out there, and it's fairly close, but I think that 7mm PRC is just going to continually expand that and get more popular. And I'm not sure about the 270 WSM, especially with the 6.8 Western now on the scene. So I'd say there's a slight edge to the 7 PRC currently, but it's close. But going forward, I see the factory offerings definitely extending and getting the gap a little bit bigger as time goes on. Now also when it comes to factory ammo, you're not going to find 165 grain Accubon long range in a 270 WSM. It stabilizes perfectly. I've shot it multiple times with multiple powders out of my gun at my elevation. But it probably won't at sea level. And so you're not going to find factory ammo in the 270 WSM at that heavy of a bullet. You're really going to find between 130 and 150 grains. And with the 7 PRC, you're going to get predominantly 160 to 195. But with that faster twist rate, you definitely are going to see more offerings in heavier and potentially even lighter bullets. Now, I think I have enough experience reloading both cartridges that I can make at least an informed take on this and offer my perspective. And all we're doing is having fun here anyway. We love to talk about rifle cartridges and drink coffee. And so it's just a fun thing to do. 270 WSM came out around the turn of the century. It came out just a little bit after the 300 WSM, which is its parent cartridge. And the 7 PRC came out just a couple years ago. It came out, and it is a 300 PRC, shortened a little bit, and of course neck down. And both of those cartridges come from the 375 Ruger cartridge. Now they're different calibers, but you're talking about 7/1000ths of an inch difference between .277 and .284. So they're very similar in their caliber. As I talked about in the last video, they have the same max STAMI pressure, and they have almost the same case volume, though the 7 PRC does have more case volume. Now the big thing is the twist rate. The 270 WSM has a 1 in 10 twist, which will limit it with the heaviest per caliber bullets. The 7mm PRC has a 1 in 8, which will help it with those heavier bullets. Now, my personal philosophy on twist rate is you want it to be as slow as possible and still stabilize the bullets you're looking to stabilize. And I think you'll actually get the best performance with as slow as twist rate as possible. However, that will limit you. So, for instance, if you can shoot the heaviest bullet that you want to shoot with a 1 in 9 twist, I would prefer that over a 1 in 8. But sometimes you can't. And so sometimes you need to go faster with that 1 in 8 to stabilize a particular bullet. So there can be some give and take here. It's not automatically better just because the twist rate's faster. It depends what bullet you are going to shoot out of it, what your application is, but it does offer it more versatility. Now, I just showed you a little bit of the performance you can expect from these cartridges, but for all practical purposes, the 270 WSM is going to get you very similar performance as the 270 Weatherby. It will be a little faster than the 270 Winchester, and it's going to get you very similar to the 270 Weatherby. The 7mm PRC is going to get you very similar velocity and performance as a 7 rim mag, but not quite. You know, if it's a 9.5, the 7 rim mag is probably a 10. It's just slightly less case capacity, and unless you have Reloader 26 or the ideal powder, you're probably not gonna quite get the velocity of a 7 rim mag, but it's pretty close. And I've called the 7 PRC a modern day 7 rim mag because it's very similar. One other thing that really jumps out is the head height. The 270 WSM is in a short action, and so they didn't design it to have that bullet sticking way out there. With the 7 PRC, like all their PRC and Creedmoor cartridges, Hornady thought about that ahead of time and wanted a large head height to be part of the cartridge overall length so that it wouldn't be taking up case capacity. If you have a custom chamber or a custom magazine or action, you can load out a 270 WSM to long action lengths and do some pretty cool stuff with it. But generally speaking, if you get a factory rifle like what I showed today, you are going to be limited to that short action magazine and chamber. Now, for all intents and purposes, you're going to get very similar velocity. If you shoot a bullet that weighs the same in both cartridges, the 270 WSM in that case would have a higher BC bullet, and the 7 PRC would go a little faster with the same bullet. If you had two bullets that were around the same BC in sectional density, 1 in 27 caliber, 1 in 28 caliber, in that instance you're going to get basically the same velocity because the cases are just about the same. So generally speaking, you can get about the same muzzle velocity in these two cartridges. However, the edge would go to the 7 PRC, a little bit more case capacity, and on top of that, the bullet's seated out further generally, which gives you even more case capacity. And so the potential is there. It obviously depends on the load, whether you're hand loading or shooting factory ammo. It just depends on how it's been loaded. Overall, it's about the same velocity, but the edge would go to the 7 PRC because of that little bit extra case capacity. What would you hunt with these cartridges? In all honesty, you could hunt anything with these cartridges you want to. I would exclude dangerous game. Now, in Africa, it'd be against the law to use one of these cartridges for dangerous game. But even if it's, you know, an Alaskan brown bear here in the North American continent, I still would advise against it. Could you do it? Of course, but it's not ideal. And in my opinion, when it comes to dangerous game, you should pick something else. But if it's not dangerous game, basically any medium or large game in the world can be taken with either one of these cartridges. If you're talking about antelope, you know, you could get a lightweight bullet that would be just perfect for antelope. Or if you wanted a little bit heavier bullet that would buck the wind better, you could do that obviously as well. But you don't need a ton of energy, a ton of power for something like an antelope or a white-tailed deer. Do you need these cartridges to shoot antelope or deer? Of course not. You could go much lighter You don't need this level. These are kind of entry-level magnums, and so they're a little much for a deer or an antelope. Having said that, they're going to work very effectively and do a great job. But say you're talking about a really large mule deer buck, it'd be ideal for it, especially if you're out west and you see a nice mule deer buck at significant distance. I'm talking, 300 to 500 yards. The little extra steam and the extra power you've got with these cartridges is going to be great. If you're elk hunting, are these cartridges good enough for elk? Of course. Now, I think, they're on the low end, but they're definitely adequate. Could do a great job. You definitely want to make sure you have the correct bullet that's going to penetrate good enough on a large animal like an elk, but it absolutely could be devastating on those animals. You're talking about black bear, be perfect. Generally speaking, when it comes to a black bear, the same type of cartridge that you'd hunt a deer with or an elk with will be just fine. So could a 270 WSM or a 7 PRC take a black bear? Absolutely, without any problems at all. Anything in North America, from aoudad to caribou and everything I've talked about, it's going to be perfect. My only exception would be I don't think it's ideal for large coastal brown bear. If you're talking about Europe or New Zealand and fallow deer and red deer and stag and different things, perfect for all that kind of stuff. You're talking about African plains game, all those antelope species, perfect. It would be absolutely ideal. It's not to say that a 300 Weatherby or a 300 Winchester Magnum wouldn't also be ideal for African plains game. It definitely would. Even the old 30-06 would work just fine. But these two cartridges, excluding dangerous game, are almost ideal for any type of medium or large game on this planet, either one. And for that matter, the 270 Weatherby or even the 270 Winchester would be great for those game as well. Or of course the 7mm Remington Magnum. Any of these cartridges are going to work great. I am a fan of efficient cartridges. I've talked about it since the beginning of my channel. I do like cartridges that are modern and efficient, and I think both of these cartridges are. I did a video on my channel probably a couple years ago where I went over all the 7mm cartridges and I picked what I thought was the best designed, and I picked the 7 PRC. And then I did a 5-part series on my channel where I picked the best designed 30 caliber cartridge, and I picked the 300 WSM, which is the same case as the 270 WSM. So me personally, I think the WSM case and the 7mm PRC case are two of the best cases you can possibly get. I'm really a fan of those cartridges and those cases. Now, I've had a little experience with these two. Now, you might want to throw in the 6.8 Western, hashtag save the 6.8 Western, and you could throw it into this conversation too. I have shot it in a Browning, a really nice Browning X-Bolt, but I've never reloaded for it, and so I don't feel like I have enough to say in comparison, but it's going to be right in the middle of these guys. It's going to do all the same things that these two can do. These cartridges are going to use very similar powders. The powder capacity to overbore ratio is about the same, so the same types of powders are going to be used. Generally speaking, they're going to be in the same length barrels, usually 24. Now, you could go up to 26 and get a little more velocity, and you could jump down to 20, 22, 23, put a suppressor on them, and still get pretty good velocity. In my experience so far, I'm getting between 200 and 300 feet per second more velocity out of the 7 PRC than the 708 with the same grain bullet. And I've stoked up that 708 pretty good and got really good velocity, but you can easily get 250 probably to 300 feet per second more with the same bullet out of a 7 PRC. And I'd say you could probably get around 200 feet per second more velocity out of the 270 Winchester Short Magnum as you can the normal 270 Winchester. Going forward, which one of these cartridges do I think is going to, stay relevant, be available, have more and more chamberings and rifle offerings and things like that? Probably the 7 PRC. Winchester's kind of competing against itself with the 6.8 Western. They have both, and they're both out there. There's actually a lot of rifles chambered in the 270 WSM. Until recently, you just couldn't find ammo or brass, but that has changed and it's out there. But I feel like the 6.8 Western is kind of going to supplant the 270 WSM. Just in case you don't know, the 6.8 Western is just a slightly smaller case. So it doesn't quite hold the same amount of powder, but it has the same cartridge overall length. Basically, the bullet's just sticking out further, has that head height and that faster twist rate, similar to the 7 PRC. So I feel like over time, the 6.8 Western's probably gonna, keep getting a little bit more popular, but the 270 WSM has a very cult-like following, and people like myself love it. So it has a cult-like following, but I don't really see it getting any more popular than it is now. And unfortunately, potentially it could, start to decline in popularity. The 7 PRC and the 7 Rim Mag are extremely popular. A lot more people have 7 Rim Mags because it's been around a lot longer, and it's an exceptional cartridge. It's not going anywhere anytime soon, but I do believe the 7 PRC is going to continue to get more and more popular. And you also got to realize the 270 Winchester is pretty darn popular, and that takes a little cut of the market away from the 270 WSM. So if you're just getting into hunting and you want to make sure you get a cartridge that's going to be around for a long time, I'd say the edge definitely goes to the 7 PRC. All right, so which one wins? Well, I personally really like the 270 WSM. I'm going to continue to shoot it, continue to load for it, and it's always going to be part of my repertoire when it comes to my rifle cartridges, whether I'm hunting or letting other people hunt with my rifles. It's always going to be there. For all practical reasons, for hunting distances, these cartridges are identical. Not literally identical, but very similar. They're going to do the same things. One's not going to be dramatically better than the other. But if I'm being completely honest, in every category, the 7 PRC just ekes it out a little bit. It's like give the 270 WSM a 9 in every single category. The 7 PRC would get like a 9.5 in every single category. It's just a little bit more versatile with that twist rate. It just has a little bit more case capacity. You can get a little bit more out of it. It's just a little bit more common and available and popular. And so it just ekes it out. It's honestly a pretty easy win for the 7 PRC, but it's not like, it dramatically is better. They're almost the same, but in every way, it's just slightly better. So it would be a slightly better version of a 270 WSM. Now there's also the 7mm WSM, which would be another good one to compare. I just don't have it. Never shot one, never reloaded for it. And so I compared these two cartridges that I really like and have both of them and have reloaded for both of them. So basically it's a tie, but the edge definitely goes to the 7 PRC. It's been a really fun video to make. I enjoy doing this little double header with rifles reloading in the range and coffee and cartridges both into one video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. More content like this coming out. Hope you have a wonderful day, and until next time, take care.